In this story, our main character used to get picked on by a girl, and to make matters even worse, he ends up making the absolute worst choice of his life. He takes all of her money and decides to put it into cryptocurrency. And by the very next day, those coins crash hard, leaving him with a loss of $10,000 that she had lent him. And now that they're both heading to college, he has no choice but to let her stay at his place, since he blew through all her cash. And just like that, they begin living together in the same apartment. Yeah, living with your bully, what could possibly go wrong? And the worst part is that this girl constantly takes advantage of our poor hero. I know you already figured out exactly what kind of advantage we're talking about, but the twist is that he actually likes another girl, and definitely not this one, even though she's ridiculously attractive. And this situation is going to lead to some seriously awkward and hilarious moments. Trust me, you're going to love this chaos. Without wasting any more time, let's jump right in. Have you ever thought about that one girl you absolutely couldn't stand, the one who bothered you all throughout high school, and then suddenly, in college, you're forced to let her move into your apartment? Yeah, nightmare difficulty unlocked. This is the story of Jinso, our protagonist. It all starts with him waking up at 7 in the morning and turning off his phone alarm. He wonders if he's just like any other student who has to drag themselves out of bed early every single day. Then his mood instantly drops, because he really wanted to sleep in longer. Relatable, mornings are the real final boss. He says he might look like a regular guy but insists there's something about him that's far from ordinary, and that's when we find out exactly what that something is. Jinso was living with a girl, and no guys, she was definitely not his girlfriend, quite the opposite actually. And we immediately get a glimpse of her personality. She starts complaining and snaps at him. Set your alarm to vibrate only, don't make noise, you're ruining my sleep. He feels embarrassed and quickly apologizes. Then she throws a pillow straight at his face and asks if he lost something, since he was staring at her. Cold, absolutely ruthless. After that she tells him, don't forget to buy me my toy when you come back. This whole toy situation, guys, goes back exactly 2 months, back when they were still in high school. She used to mess with him every single day and never gave the poor guy a break. She even told him he was probably counting the days until he could finally get rid of her, and our protagonist, like an idiot, said no. That he didn't mind her at all. Certified nice guy behavior right there. Because of that, she kept teasing him non-stop, until one day she ordered him to go buy her a snack. The protagonist, clearly uncomfortable, says he doesn't have any money. So she grabs him by the hair and asks if he wasn't involved with cryptocurrency. Meaning he should have plenty of money, right? Jinso explains that crypto is risky, that you can either become insanely rich or lose everything in an instant. In other words, yeah, gambling with extra steps. She tells him to shut up and hurry to the store, handing him her credit card to pay for the snack. He wonders how she can trust him after tormenting him all through high school, but still heads to the market, hoping he won't have to see her again after graduation. But then he remembers she applied to the same university as him, and apparently, she did it just to keep bothering him. That level of dedication is honestly terrifying. He even thought no university of that level would ever accept someone like her. Words that, as you can probably guess, did not age well at all. He comes back with the snack, and she tells him she has good news, and that good news, guys, is that she got accepted into the exact same university as him. She shows him the notification on her phone, and to his horror, it's completely real. And just like that, he realizes there's no escape. He returns home feeling completely drained, knowing he'll have to keep dealing with her for a long time. When he gets there, he finds a note from his mother saying she'll be spending the week in Japan. She even mentions that she thinks money solves everything. Since she left him some cash, he feels down because today was the day he'd receive his university results. Yet his mother chose to go on a trip instead. Priorities, questionable. So he sits down at his computer and decides to blow off some stress by investing in cryptocurrency. He notices one of the coins is going up and says it would be crazy not to buy in. If it keeps rising, he could become rich and recover all the money he had previously invested. But unfortunately, guys, he doesn't have a single cent left. He already spent everything. So he grabs his wallet to double check, and that's when he realizes he still has Daijang's credit card with him. And at that moment, he starts laughing like a maniac. Yeah, we all know where this is going. A massive temptation hits him, the urge to use her card to invest in crypto. In a moment of pure stupidity, he decides to dip into his bully's money and uses her credit card to buy those coins. But now you're probably wondering, did the crypto go up? Nope, guys, it dropped like a brick and he lost absolutely everything. Speedrun to financial ruin, any percent. And as soon as she found out, she beat him up. She couldn't believe he had wasted all her money on that nonsense. And without a shred of mercy, she tells him, "I don't care. Sell your organs if you have to, but pay me back." She demands that he repay her with interest and adjustments since she lost nearly 10 million won. And that lost money included the rent for her university apartment, meaning she could no longer live on her own. So you can already guess what happens next, right? The protagonist is forced to let her move into his apartment. On moving day, she doesn't stop complaining for even a second, clearly stressed out. And the two of them had made a deal. He would let her stay there. In return, she wouldn't tell their parents about the debt he had created, a deal sealed under maximum pressure. While helping her move in, he accidentally drops one of her boxes and ends up breaking her toy. So in order to start paying off that debt, he got a job at a convenience store. When he arrives at work, he spots his boss crouched down picking up a box and the protagonist instantly gets extremely flustered. She starts complaining while struggling with it, wondering where all this stuff even came from and saying it would be better to just organize everything on the shelves. The girl's name, guys, is Yahello, and the protagonist clearly has a thing for her, so he quickly rushes over and offers to help carry the heavy box. "Down bad already and we just got here." She wipes the sweat from her face and comments that he showed up pretty early. She's a bit older than him, guys, and he mentions that his whole day brightens the moment he sees her. In a gentle tone she thanks him for helping out. While she's talking, the protagonist can't stop thinking about how beautiful she is and how different she is from Dijon. Yahello is pretty, caring, kind, a total goddess, and on top of that she has a great heart. Yeah, nice save, almost believable. That's definitely what he meant, guys. Trust him. Sure, buddy, we're all convinced. So the protagonist just stands there acting like a complete fool while talking to her, and the scene suddenly cuts to Dijon with her broken toy. She complains that idiot Jinso broke the one thing he absolutely shouldn't have touched, and now she's, let's say, craving some action. But there's no decent guy at the university, no one meets her standards. High standards, low patience, dangerous combo. She then tries to fix her toy and says it's time to have some fun, but when she attempts to use it, it completely falls apart, since it was already damaged beyond repair. So she gets furious and starts spamming the protagonist with messages. While he's working he notices his phone buzzing, and in the messages she's cursing him out, telling him to bring a cucumber, which she's apparently going to use at home, for dinner, right? Yeah, dinner, sure. He starts wondering what kind of dish she could possibly need that for, and whether it's exactly what he's thinking. As he reads the message Isekai shows up and asks if that girl is his girlfriend. He immediately panics and answers that no, he doesn't have a girlfriend. And he makes it very clear, guys, that he's single, completely girlfriend-free. Loud and clear, my man. In a very sweet way she says, "Good to know," and then says goodbye. Trying to play it cool he also says goodbye. Then it hits him that she said it was good to know he didn't have a girlfriend. And he just stands there full of hope, wondering if she might like him. Meanwhile, his phone keeps getting flooded with messages. Daijong is asking why he's not replying and if he has a death wish. And the poor guy is just thinking about his coworker. Because if she ever found out he's living with another girl, that would completely ruin his chances of getting closer to her. Later on, Daijong is at a college party. She realizes that hardly any of the guys there seem decent. So she starts evaluating them one by one, until she finds one who seems somewhat acceptable. Then she decides to approach him. She asks if she can drink with him and he agrees. And the guy instantly falls for her, and she asks what they're talking about. And he says it's about one of his friends doing a work exchange. And within just a few minutes of conversation, she already realizes the guy is a complete jerk. Speedrun Disappointment Edition. When she gets home, furious and kicking the door, she asks Jinsu where the cucumber is, but he doesn't answer. So she starts yelling. And that's when we find out what happened at the bar. That guy had told her he wanted to spend the night with her, because he thought she was easy. And that's why she left absolutely furious. The protagonist shows up and awkwardly greets her, saying he's fixing the bathroom door, which was broken. Then she asks if he bought what she told him to get. He says yes, it's in the refrigerator. So she starts complaining, saying it's going to be cold. She tells him to stop joking around and go into the bathroom and put on headphones so he won't hear anything. Bro got sent to spectator mode. Inside the bathroom, the poor guy keeps the headphones on, pretending to listen to something, but he's not actually hearing anything. The only thing he can hear are the sounds coming from outside. He says she treats him that way because she doesn't see him as a man, just as a kid. Then he remembers all the time she humiliated him. She used to make him run errands at parties, and not even the people there respected him. And that's why she could do those things on the other side of the room without worrying about him, because she truly didn't see him as a man. A few minutes pass and she's still not done, and he starts getting curious. Curiosity really about to ruin this man's life. While she was, let's say, cooking, the cucumber ended up breaking. So she rushes to open the bathroom door to yell at the protagonist for not getting a proper vegetable. And that's when she catches him off guard. She gets so startled that she falls to the floor. Then she's left speechless, and it looks like now she'll have to face the protagonist as an actual man, right? He says, "You can't just open the door like that without knocking." Then she kicks him out of the apartment. He protests, saying, "That's my apartment," while she, furious, says she can't believe what she just saw. She doesn't want to admit it, guys, but she was genuinely shocked by what she saw, even shaking her head trying to get it out of her mind. Then she remembers all the time she mistreated him, because she never saw him as a real man. And she realizes that it's because of that idiot that she's feeling this way. Someone's having a little existential crisis. Jinso ends up locked outside, and it's already almost midnight, with class early the next morning. So he says that if the bathroom door had at least had a lock, this whole misunderstanding wouldn't have happened. Eventually she gives in and opens the door, telling him to crawl back into the apartment, before she changes her mind. She tells him, "Just because I was a little nice to you, now you think I'm a joke and that you're living the good life since starting college. But you need to suffer, because you owe me 10 million, and until you pay that debt, you're worth nothing." She calls him an insect and kicks him again. Then she tells him that from now on, that kind of behavior is strictly forbidden inside the apartment. If he ever does it again, she'll rip those parts off and throw them in the trash. Yeah, that's a boss-level threat right there. 1 week later, Jinso is passed out in the classroom, completely drained from juggling college, work and all the assignments he has to deal with. The professor at the university wakes him up, telling him class is already over and he can head home. He apologizes and rushes out, drenched in sweat. Man really hit the sleep DLC mid-lecture. He comments that if the professor hadn't woken him, he probably would have slept until the next day. Then he notices it's already getting dark, meaning he won't have time to stop by his house. He'll have to go straight to work, since it's already close to 6:30 in the evening. As he walks, he keeps replaying what his bully said about the rules she imposed. He admits he's actually pretty scared of her, so he sends her a message asking if she wants him to bring anything when he gets off work. Fear-based customer service, nice. On the way, he runs into her, but she just looks at him and ignores him, pretending she doesn't even know him. So he figures she does that because she doesn't want anyone around to realize she's a bully. Then he watches her walk away with her friends and reflects that, in college there are two very different types of people. The outcasts, who grind day and night working, and the popular crowd, who are constantly invited to parties. And that's exactly why they pretend not to know each other. While he's lost in thought, his phone suddenly rings. When he checks it, he sees it's a message from Isel. She asks if he's already on his way to work, saying she's really bored there, and sends him a cute emoji. Instant mood boost unlocked. He lights up with happiness, saying his life still has a bit of hope left, and rushes to get to work as fast as possible. When he arrives, she mentions he got there early, so he replies that he came straight from university. She asks if he's okay, since he looks exhausted. He insists he's doing great and says it's probably just because exam season is coming up. Then she says she'll have to deal with that kind of problem when she goes back to studying, adding that she wants to keep taking a break for now. So we find out, guys, that she's currently on a break from college. The protagonist tells her she'll do amazing because she works the right way. She then asks if he meant that the only thing she's good at is working at a convenience store. Critical hit landed. Emotional damage. At that moment, the protagonist thinks he completely messed up and has no idea how to fix what he just said. But she gives him a sweet smile and says she was just joking, asking if he got scared. Right then the protagonist realizes she's the perfect girl for him, and she starts laughing, saying she knew he'd fall for it. Jinso is completely head over heels and wonders if this could be the start of a beautiful relationship. Then the girl says goodbye and leaves, and his shift at work begins. He says he's going through a tough time, but hopes that someday things will work out between him and Isua. Later he brings another vegetable home so his roommate can, let's say, cook, and he even checks to make sure it's in good condition. Preparation levels suspiciously thorough. When he arrives, she's holding a roll of tape and he instantly gets scared without knowing what's going on. And that's when we find out what happened. The day before, she met a new guy who actually seemed like he knew how to behave. He was handsome, polite, and looked like he came from a good family. So she decided to go out with him. She even commented that she wouldn't need to cook the cucumber anymore, since that vegetable had just been a temporary substitute. Yeah, that plan aged poorly. However, what that guy had to offer wasn't anything impressive, and she ended up pretty disappointed. She even mentions that the guy fell asleep right after, and that's why she thought about the protagonist when she opened the bathroom door. At first, she didn't want to admit she was thinking about him, but she couldn't get Jinsu out of her head. Her toy was broken, and that vegetable wasn't very good for cooking. And the best option she had left was the clueless protagonist. Not exactly a 5-star plan, but here we are. Even if she didn't want to admit it, she actually wanted to be with him. So she tapes his mouth shut and ties up his hands. Then she makes full use of the protagonist, and he can't do anything about it. And all he can do is think about his waifu. Yeah, this guy is gone, completely in love. After a long and very detailed chapter, that scene finally ends, and the next day begins with the protagonist's phone ringing at 8 in the morning. He quickly turns off the alarm and immediately looks over at his bully to check if she woke up. But guys, she's sleeping like a rock. Yeah, she's not waking up anytime soon. She was probably exhausted from what happened the night before. The protagonist looks like a literal mummy. At the same time, he's in disbelief, unable to process what just happened. He can barely even stand, so he gets dressed and heads to university, leaving her there asleep. He says he's completely worn out and that everything feels like a nightmare. Later he eats lunch at the cafeteria, and as he leaves, his classmates call out to him, saying they want to have a meeting over the weekend to discuss their group project. The protagonist still hasn't given up on cryptocurrency and thinks it's one of the only ways he can pay off his debt. Crypto comeback arc? Surely nothing goes wrong. And, feeling nervous about going back home without knowing what to expect, with butterflies in his stomach, he stays there for a while mentally preparing himself. When he finally gets there, he sees her eating fried fish while messing around on her laptop. She acts completely indifferent and just keeps eating. The protagonist wonders if, after everything that happened, she's really going to act like nothing changed. Then she calls him over, and he immediately starts to worry. She asks him to make some instant noodles, and he ends up obeying. Then they eat the noodles together. She says, "I'm going to sleep, turn off the lights, and if you wake me up, I'll kill you." So she gives him one final warning. If he plans to use his phone, he has to hide under the blanket since she's a light sleeper. Then she lies down, and within seconds, she's already snoring. And he mocks her, saying her light sleep hits about as hard as an elephant's. Yeah, that's not light sleep, that's seismic activity. The protagonist just stands there, frozen, staring at her like that, and his cheeks slowly turn red. So he smacks himself to snap back to reality. Then he decides he's going out for a walk. He leaves the apartment, wondering if maybe he's actually the problem in all of this after what happened yesterday. Also replaying everything she said, he keeps questioning whether she's just going to act like nothing ever happened. Man really trying to gaslight himself into peace. But then guys, he runs into Isel. She was sorting out recyclable trash. She asks why he showed up so early, and he gets flustered, saying he was just wandering around and somehow ended up there. Then he checks the time and realizes, yeah, he really did show up way too early. So, trying to cover it up, he says he came to buy something, and she asks if he doesn't live far from there. Yeah guys, he actually lives pretty far, but he awkwardly brushes it off, saying it's not that far, and scratches his head, clearly embarrassed. She welcomes him in like a proper customer, and asks if he needs help, and he just falls even harder, thinking she's incredibly polite and adorable. Bro is gone, no recovery possible. He says she's the only girl he can rely on. He hadn't meant to end up in that area, but since he was already there, he took the chance to buy a few things. He was genuinely happy to run into her. Then his stomach growls, and he says he'll grab something to eat before starting work. She hurt his stomach and asks if he wants something, and the protagonist says yes. So she suggests some noodles, saying they're a new and tasty item, and hands them over. And he agrees to try them. She celebrates and says she'll ring it up at the register. She tells him to enjoy his meal, and he sits down to eat, completely lovestruck, when he notices the noodles came with a promotional coupon. He says he never wins these things, but the prizes are actually pretty good. There was a car, a TV, or a shopping voucher. The protagonist says winning a car would be amazing. If that happened, he'd sell it, and use the money to pay off his debt. Then he could kick Daijun out of his apartment. Man already planning financial freedom off instant noodles, so the protagonist decides to give it a shot. Nothing to lose, right? He scans the code with his phone. It takes him to a website, where he taps the little spin the wheel button to enter the draw. And to his surprise, guys, he wins 2 movie tickets. Yisel shows up all excited, saying he got really lucky to win something. Then the protagonist has a genius idea, and says it was all thanks to her, asking if she'd like to take the tickets. Basically testing the waters. Smooth, or at least he thinks so. Guys, Yisel says he's the one who won, but he replies that he has no one to go with. Then she says there's actually a movie she really wants to see, and suggests they go together. Yes guys, the protagonist just secured a date. Will this date go well? Stick around to find out how this story unfolds. Back at home, his roommate is drying her hair while asking if he's going out somewhere, calling him a loser. She says he's being suspicious since he's trembling like a dog that can't even do its business. The poor guy seriously is shaking because he has a date, and he's already running late. So he makes up an excuse, saying he has a university meeting, and asks if she's going out too, clearly trying to hide the fact he has a date. She replies, "Yeah, I'm going out, and unlike you, I'm not a loser who stays locked inside all weekend." Emotional damage, critical hit. The terrified protagonist just nods, saying she's right. Then she asks if he wants to use the hairdryer, and casually asks if there's any girl in the group, and he says yes. Then she asks if he seriously thinks just fixing his hair will impress a girl. He wishes he could confidently give a thumbs up and admit she nailed it, but instead all he says is that he just wants to look presentable, scratching his head awkwardly. She calls him stupid, laughs, and walks out the door. He waits for her to leave, then immediately rushes to get ready. He goes all out, slicking his hair straight back with gel, wondering if this is how guys usually do it. Bro turned into a K-drama CEO for a movie date. On the day of the date, she had said they'd meet Saturday at noon. So he imagined showing up all dressed up with his slicked back hair, only for her to arrive super casually and make fun of him for trying too hard. He worries she'll think he's an idiot for dressing like that, and that she'll figure out he's never been on a date before, especially since it's just a movie. Now he's overthinking every possible outcome. So, fearing that exact scenario, he goes and washes his hair again to get rid of the gel. He dries it the way he normally does, and changes into very casual clothes. Because he switched outfits last minute, he ends up arriving late. So he shows up apologizing. The girl, sweet as ever, says, "The movie hasn't started yet, so relax." She mentions he must have run all the way there and is probably overheating. He replies, "Don't worry, I'm fine." Meanwhile, he's annoyed at himself for being even later because of washing his hair again, especially since she showed up nicely dressed, while he came looking completely normal. And guys, she was genuinely treating him really well. The protagonist immediately starts getting carried away in his imagination, convincing himself that maybe he actually has a real chance with her. His eyes keep drifting toward her sheer white blouse, and he even points out that it leaves almost nothing to the imagination. Classic anime protagonist behavior, stealth level, non-existent. She suddenly reminds him they need to hurry or they'll miss the beginning of the movie, so the two of them sprint toward the theater. While they're running, she accidentally smacks him right in the family jewels with her hand, leaving him in intense pain, while she blushes in embarrassment and quickly apologizes. He simply tells her it's no big deal. That painful moment reminds Jinso of the time Daijang deliberately kicked him there, and compared to that, this barely registered. Somehow the poor guy keeps collecting trauma like it's a side quest. They make it to the theater before the film starts and take their seats. Their eyes meet, and the atmosphere instantly turns incredibly romantic. Guys. He can't stop thinking that if he had arrived a little earlier, they could have spent even more time together, but his own insecurity about his clothes had wasted the perfect opportunity to get closer to her. Once the movie begins, he decides he'll focus completely so he can enjoy it while figuring out what to say to her afterward. He's fully immersed in the film, until his phone suddenly starts ringing. Of course, peace was never an option. The phone refuses to stop ringing, forcing him to get up, and he apologizes before stepping away. He wonders who could possibly be calling since hardly anyone ever contacts him. The second he checks the screen, he already knows exactly who it is. Yep, guys, it had to be Daijang. He answers the call, and she immediately tears into him, calling him an idiot and demanding to know why he took so long to answer. She then asks where he is, but he can't admit he's at the movies because he previously lied and claimed he was working on a university assignment. Instead, he says he's near home at the Avenue intersection, and asks why she wants to know. She happily laughs and says that's wonderful because she's nearby too, then orders him to meet her at exit 3 of the subway station. Jinso asks what she needs him for, and she bluntly replies that she needs to use him the same way she did a few weeks ago. Yeah, that sentence definitely raised some eyebrows. Meanwhile, Lee Seol keeps wondering where the protagonist disappeared to, because he still hasn't returned. He asks if it absolutely has to be right now because at the moment it's impossible. He suggests waiting a couple of hours instead. The girl instantly explodes with rage, cursing him nonstop and saying he has no right to refuse just in case he somehow thinks he can do whatever he wants. She keeps yelling at him over the phone, and Jinso can't even come up with a response. She reminds him that he has to obey every order she gives because he still owes her a huge amount of money. Then she coldly tells him he has 5 minutes to get there if he doesn't want to die. And with that, she hangs up right in his face. The protagonist freezes in complete panic, unable to move. Rewind about 2 hours earlier, and Deong is eating at a restaurant with her friends. They had arranged to meet after finishing classes at the university. Once the conversation shifts to relationships, her friends keep asking whether she's dating anyone. Feeling a little embarrassed, Deong eventually lies and says yes because someone as popular as her should obviously have several guys chasing after her, even though reality couldn't have been more different. Sometimes pride writes checks common sense can't cash. She was terrified they'd figure out she was bluffing. The truth was that deep down she had already started falling for Jinso and couldn't get him out of her head for even a moment. She kept replaying the time they spent together over and over again. She even snaps at her friends, saying they're talking nonsense and complaining that all their chatter made her think about that clueless idiot again. She refuses to admit it, but she's completely losing her mind over him, so she quickly says goodbye to her friends, claiming she has a date. That was the exact moment she called our protagonist, and completely ruined his movie outing with his waifu. Mission failed successfully. The two head to a hotel downtown, and our hero jumps into the shower so he'll smell nice for her. Meanwhile, Deong keeps grumbling that he's taking forever because she's starving. The moment he steps out of the shower, she's already waiting outside and catches him completely off guard, pinning him down before he can react. Right after that, she immediately starts taking advantage of the poor guy. His phone suddenly buzzes with a new message. It was from his waifu. He had abandoned her alone at the theater, which was honestly a pretty rude thing to do. She had always treated him kindly, and Jinso starts wondering whether she genuinely likes him or if she's simply toying with his feelings, considering how nice of a guy he is. He asks Daijang to let go because she's squeezing his hands so tightly that it hurts, and she finally releases him. He quickly grabs his phone so he can reply to the messages. Lee Sul asks why he suddenly disappeared, and he immediately panics, convinced he has completely blown his chances because no girl would appreciate someone leaving like that without an explanation. Bro is already writing his own rejection arc. After thinking for a moment, he comes up with an excuse, saying he suddenly felt really sick and had to leave because he thought he might be coming down with the flu. She asks why he didn't simply tell her first, since disappearing like that made her genuinely worried. Without an ounce of shame, our hero immediately imagines her sweetly asking how he's feeling and can't stop wondering why she's so incredibly kind to him. I don't know, guys. That sounds like more than simple kindness. The women in this story are surprisingly opportunistic. She asks whether the pain is serious, and he replies that he has a slight fever but is already starting to feel a little better. On the other end of the phone, the girl is clearly worried about him. Meanwhile, Jinso is already getting excited, imagining she's completely in love with him. Lee Sul says she feels guilty for leaving him alone at home and offers to come over and take care of him. Our shameless protagonist happily tells her she's more than welcome to come. The moment he finishes what he has to do, he heads to the bathroom for another shower before giving her his address. This guy is preparing like it's the final boss battle. His heart is racing, and she tells him she'll arrive at his house at around 3 in the afternoon. When the time finally comes, she heads over there and immediately thinks the place feels rather strange, and it's obvious that his waifu was genuinely worried about him. When he finally arrives at the location shown on the GPS, he hesitates, wondering if this is really the right place. He starts questioning whether inviting her over had been a terrible idea because, caught up in the moment while he was with Daijang, he gave her his address without thinking, and now he's realizing that letting her come over wasn't exactly his brightest decision. Rookie rom-com mistake number 1. Speedrun edition. He glances to the side and notices the girl peacefully asleep. She had to leave before Lee Sul arrived at the apartment. Several minutes pass in complete silence. Eventually Daijang wakes up and remembers she's supposed to meet her friends later that day. She hurriedly changes clothes, but something tells her Jinso is hiding a secret, so she stares straight into his clueless-looking face. And she wasn't wrong, because he was desperately trying to keep her from finding out another girl was about to visit his apartment. The instant Daijang slams the door behind her as she leaves, he realizes he has to clean everything up immediately since Lee Sul could reach the apartment at any moment. The 2 toothbrushes had to disappear, all the cosmetics needed to be hidden, and on top of that, her clothes had to be put away because seeing them would create a disaster. Bro is speedrunning evidence removal. After that, he takes another steaming hot shower so he'll genuinely look sick, and he even puts on a face mask to sell the act. Right then Lee Sul rings the apartment doorbell. She looked absolutely stunning, guys. The moment he sees her, our protagonist falls for her even harder. He keeps hoping his fake illness will seem convincing enough for her to believe every word. As soon as she steps inside, she's surprised by how spotless the apartment is. She never expected a guy living alone to keep everything so neat and organized. Jinso suddenly notices a strand of hair lying on the bed, so he throws himself over it, pretending he's simply lost his balance because he's supposedly too weak to stand properly. That performance only makes Lee Sool worry about him even more, so she leans in close to check whether he has a fever. Oscar-worthy acting, accidentally. Since he had just been standing under scorching hot water, his forehead was still warm, making her even more convinced that he was running a fever. She asks if he's eaten anything yet, and he admits he hasn't. Because of that, she decides to cook him some soup, explaining that someone who's sick shouldn't go without food for too long. She says it in the sweetest voice imaginable, and Jinso becomes even more convinced she's incredible, even wondering if she's secretly flirting with him, though he isn't completely sure. Lee Sool turns around and says she'll prepare something nutritious because she doesn't want to see him suffering. At that moment, our shameless hero can't stop staring at her, and his cheeks slowly turn bright red. Yeah, we all know exactly where this man's eyes wandered. Meanwhile, Di-jong is out spending time with her friends, but she's bored out of her mind and can't stop thinking about our hero, so she decides to head home much earlier than planned. Back in the apartment, Lee Sool is making oatmeal soup while Jinso, acting like the shameless old man he is, keeps staring at her nonstop. He continues thinking about how beautiful she is while she carefully puts genuine effort into preparing the meal. Once she's finished, Jinso tells her she's like a beautiful angel. She blushes shyly before handing him the soup, hoping he'll recover after eating it. Since he still looks weak, she decides to feed him herself, gently blowing on each spoonful before bringing it to his mouth and telling him to open wide like she's feeding a little airplane. Maximum emotional damage, critical hit. He thinks it's a little embarrassing, but he accepts anyway and takes a bite. Unfortunately, the cozy atmosphere doesn't last very long. His phone suddenly starts ringing. To Jinso's absolute misery, the caller is Di-jong, so he apologizes and says he has to answer it. She immediately starts complaining, telling him to have the food ready because she's leaving the gathering early since it turned out to be incredibly boring. That instantly puts our poor protagonist on edge because Isol might get the wrong idea after hearing him talking to another girl. As soon as the call ends, Jinso starts panicking, trying to figure out what to do because Di-jong is already on her way upstairs, while Isol is literally inside his bedroom. Yeah, this lobby is about to become PvP. Realizing how bad the situation is, he rushes to the front door to make sure she's really coming. Sure enough, he hears her footsteps approaching, so he dashes back to Isol, apologizing and promising he'll explain everything later.